Yes, on ZASLOW Show 2.0, of course, are brought to us by our beer of choice, Johnny Cuba, European roots with a Caribbean soul. Start your evening, maybe your afternoon. I don't know what you got going on with a refreshing German lager in a can. You pick up a six-pack at your local Sedano's, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas over the weekend at Broward Meat and Fish. You know what I'm talking about. Johnny Cuba, official beer of ZASLOW Show 2.0. And don't forget their mantra, stay tranquilo. Joining us here, we're talking a lot of NBA today, obviously, is our pal, former longtime NBA veteran, Raja Bell. You hear, of course, on The Ringer. Raja, always good to have you on here, man. And I wanted to talk to a former player, about unfortunately, what's the biggest story in the league right now, and that's what's going on with Ja Morant. Let me tell you how I experienced the news, okay? I picked up my son on Sunday morning from his friend's house, all right? And he's certainly on Instagram a lot more than I'm on Instagram. He's 14. And he says to me, he goes, "Hey, did you see what happened with Ja?" And I'm like, well, I mean, I know stuff's been going on recently, like he punched a 17-year-old who was claiming that he brandished a gun. And you got the situation in Indiana with the travel party. Maybe there was a laser pointer, I don't know. And now my son says to me, he was on Instagram this morning flashing a gun. And my initial reaction, no, because I've had this impression of Ja, great kid, great representative for the league, good looking kid, talks really well, plays a fun style of game. His father's very involved. He loves watching him play. I'm like, this is a great kid, and now you got this controversy around him recently. And then to add to it, we're doing the IGs with the flashing of the guns. I was so disappointed, Raja.
Yeah, brother, listen, I was too. A big Ja Morant fan myself. I've been lobbying for Ja Morant to have a signature shoe. Like I was like one of the first people to start beating the drum. Like my kids really enjoy watching him play, and I think he's super exciting. And I've been saying this as it pertains to the Memphis Grizzlies as an organization for a while. And certainly Ja as the face of that would fall into that category. But now it's specific to Ja. They have to grow up. Their team, it's got a lot of stuff going on around it. Even when they're, winning games, it's a lot of chirping, a lot of AAU kind of vibes is the way I would call it, where there's just a lot going on for what should be a professional, team that has aspirations of winning a championship. And as it pertains to Ja specifically, you've got to understand that you are the face of a city, of a franchise, and potentially of a league. And while no one begrudges you kind of having people around you and staying true to your roots in terms of what you do behind closed doors and like what the family likes to do when they get around in holidays and stuff like that. That's fine. But you have a responsibility in the public eye to comport yourself in a way that is representative of these things that you're trying to be the face of. And he needs guidance. I don't know who that is. I'm certainly not pointing finger and placing blame, but there are a lot of people within his camp individually, within those Memphis Grizzlies camps, that have, at least from the outside looking in, allowed him to act. This doesn't happen overnight, Zaz. This is a series of behavior. This is something, once you've been empowered to do it and no one has checked you at the first check stop, then you proceed to the next check stop. And if they don't check you there, then you keep going. And so someone in his camp, or multiple people in his camp, have to express to this young man like what it is to be a professional, what the optics of this are, what you are potentially putting on the line, the amount of people that are in business with you that this affects. And he doesn't seem to understand that right now. And so hopefully it's a suspension like he's currently serving, or someone putting their foot down in a way that holds him accountable, that gets him to kind of understand, because it would be so unfortunate to see someone who's got all of this at his fingertips and is still so young, and I expect to continue to lead teams to really cool heights in the NBA, put himself in a position where people have to say, hey, no thanks, but no thanks. And you never think it's going to happen until it happens. But you get so hot eventually, and we've seen it, over the last few years with people that you wouldn't think would be dropped by brands, get themselves in such a situation where a brand is forced to walk away.
What do you think? Can you explain what's going on there around the player, around the team. When people say you're hanging around the wrong people, he's got like I know his crew was banned from the arena in Indiana because something happened during the game, and then of course something obviously happened after the game. The league investigated. They said they couldn't figure out what happened or what have you, but laser pointers, I don't know. I don't know. You were on those early Sixers teams with Iverson, where people, I think, were saying that kind of stuff about Iverson and the people he was hanging around. So what does that look like? What does that mean when people are saying that?
Well, I think, Allen had a community that he represented that stood up for him. Allen had a lot of stuff, if you remember, coming into the draft, or coming out of high school, sorry, where he was in prison for a bar fight, and there were a lot of people that stood up and had Chuck's back. There were a lot of people that were backbones in probably his story. And so once he made it, he felt the responsibility to have, those people with him, in a way that was great. I enjoyed it. I like to have my friends around when I played, guys who always had my back and made it easier for me to get to practices and shielded me in some cases from trouble. And, like, hey, not him. He's got something to do. So, there are people that you feel responsibilities to, and so they're around. Now, the bigger number of people that are around, this is just regular life, right? The more chance there is for someone there to be doing something stupid or being a knucklehead. And the reality of it is, in a lot of those cases, in most of them, their names aren't going to be the ones that flash on the headlines. No one's going to be talking about them on Instagram. It's going to be, you, because you were with them. And so I think, Chuck, that was his thing. I never really wound up with them on any given night where someone in Allen's inner circle was doing something inappropriate. I had, nothing but good vibes hanging out with them and seeing the people that he grew up with and how they all had moved on to this next phase of life together. And that was really cool. And I think Allen would even tell you, he'd probably be a better person to speak to it than me, but I had it on a smaller scale where there were certain people in my camp, once they kind of revealed that they weren't necessarily professionalizing themselves like we were, that's not a word, but we have to have this conversation, because everything that you do is going to affect me. Like, there were friends of mine that, really close friends, in some cases, super close people, where you'd have to make a choice. Like, I don't know what's potentially in this vehicle. I can't get in it and ride with you, because if this vehicle gets pulled over and I'm in it, no one's going to care that I wasn't driving it or that I didn't know what was in it. And so you have to make those calls. I'm sure Allen had to make those calls. And Ja's at a point in his career where he's got to sift through that friend base in a way that protects himself and protects his brand and protects his stature in the league.
What do you make of, when I feel like there's a lot of people obviously who are upset with Ja, and rightfully so. I mean, the blame goes toward him. But then you also get a lot of defending where he's 23 years old. He's a kid. I mean, Raja, I was 23.
Sure.
You were 23. You're raising 3 boys who are going to be 23. I'm raising 2 boys who are going to be 23 one day. Raja, at 23 years old, I knew the difference between what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do. I wasn't 7 years old.
No, you're not 7 years old, certainly. But I would say this, while I'm not defending him, at 23 years old, I was an idiot. I mean, and you then compound that by being an idiot with money and the world kind of at your fingertips, because people are willing to kind of bend a rule here or there, or, give you access to something that you ordinarily wouldn't have access to. And, the problems can kind of spiral from there, right? And so, but I agree with you. Ja Morant is old enough. Ja Morant has to do, look, I mean, for any number of, we talked about this on our podcast the other day, just the fact that you're having people over that you don't know to your house, as the face of a franchise and the face of a Nike campaign, and they're playing pickup ball. You play pickup ball with people bro. Like, people who and you trust for any number of reasons. And you certainly don't have them all over to your house. Like, that's a combustible situation. You're just asking for trouble. So the decision making, at 23 years old, you don't have a lot of perspective. You came into the league, your star had a meteoric rise. It seems like the people around you are riding with you in a way that is kind of enabling somebody in his camp. If he is not able, and he should be able, I'm not deflecting or taking blame off of him, but if he is not able in a responsible adult-like way to make these decisions and sift through this, someone in his camp needs to.
Now, the NBA, as of us having this conversation right now, has not had any kind of ruling yet. I think it's coming. I think they're gathering all the information, because the thing that's really standing out to me here, Raja, and maybe you could speak a little bit better on this than I am, or than I can. That video was him with a gun, not in his home state. It was in Denver, Colorado. I'm sure they're looking around to whether or not did he carry a gun, A, across state lines, which is a federal crime, B, was it on the team plane with him, which is going to be a major, major issue, or, maybe it was someone he was hanging out with in Denver and it was their gun and it wasn't even his, which is going to be a pretty important distinction here. The first two that I mentioned right there are super serious questions that are probably needing to be answered right now, right?
Yeah, the NBA is vetting this out and digging into it in a way that very few people from the outside could understand. The resources at the NBA's disposal in terms of being able to figure out what you were doing, when you were doing it, who you were doing it with, how many times you did it, are immeasurable. They will get to the bottom of it. And again, as a Ja Morant fan, I do not know him personally. I really hope that he wasn't transporting a weapon across state lines or anything like that, because if they find that out, it's then their responsibility to act accordingly. And that's not going to be pretty for Ja, for Memphis, for the NBA, quite frankly. And so, look, I heard Stephen A say it. I've touched on it. I've kind of beat around the bush a little bit today on it. But I'll just go out and say, I love my boys. I want to be the best dad and the best friend to them as I can be. My dad is my best friend. My dad was not my best friend when I was 17, 18, 19, and 20 years old. His job was to keep me in line. He was my dad.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that that's not happening. So I'm not placing blame, but it has to happen.
No, you're right.
It seems like it's got to happen. We got to get control of this.
You're right. Yeah, no. Yeah, looking on the outside, I mean, you see the father dancing around, drinking hand, having a great time all the time. We don't know that he's also not being the father behind the scenes, but yeah, like maybe he's not. Maybe we're having a little bit too much fun and we're being buddy. You're right.
And listen, that's intoxicating. I'm not gonna, like, on a level again that very few people, unless you lived it, can understand. When you get the world at your fingertips as a player, and then by extension, your family is pulled into that world, and they are now seeing and being treated in ways that they've never been treated. That is something that people can fall into and feel like they're above situations very quickly. So that wouldn't be a unique thing in this situation. I just really hope that someone there, and I think it starts with dad. And if dad can't, then someone who does have his ear in that way has to get control of this, because it's just, he's too good of a player. He seems like too nice of a person to be going down this path. And hopefully it's early enough on the path where you can get him off and put him on another.
A couple of things for here, Raja, real quick. Saturday night, did you watch John Jones? Were you into that?
No, I didn't watch it. I was busy being an Uber driver late night, but I did see it post fight, so I know what happened.
Aren't those the days? Oh my God, driving around the early teenage boys everywhere. The hardest part about it, Raja, my older son, he's got last year. It was the bar mitzvah circuit year because he was 13 last year. So I got to pick him up every Saturday night. It's not so bad that we're the Uber driver. It's that I got to sit in my house and stare at the clock until it's 11:30, 12 o'clock. And then get up and go pick him up. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep.
No, it's the absolute worst, right? And I mean, I can't even have my bourbon and sit there and watch a game in a way that I would like to, because I'm responsible for getting you knuckleheads in a couple hours.
Finally, here, the Chris Rock special aired on, it was either Friday or Saturday night. I have yet to watch it yet. Did you watch it yet?
I have not watched that yet, but I'm very interested to see what Chris Rock is talking about.
I mean, he's the big thing that everyone's waiting for, obviously. He's had a year now to respond to Will Smith. And apparently he did in this special. Yeah. So
I have something to watch tonight.
yeah. Apparently that's very polarizing though. Some people loved it, some people didn't love it. So I'm looking forward to watching that as well. Raja, tell everybody how they can hear you, of course, on the Ringer. Go ahead.
Absolutely. We're on the Ringer NBA feed. We're a show called Real Ones. We're on Mondays and Thursdays. Logan Murdoch and I, we break down NBA stuff, but more importantly, we're there to have fun, kind of give you an inside look. We do a little storytelling. We're not X's and O's necessarily. If we need to be, we will. But it's basically vibes on our show. So check us out Monday, Thursday, Real Ones, NBA Ringer feed.
How about those Hurricanes? Can they make a run in the NCAA tournament?
Damn right, those Hurricanes can make a run. Coach Larinaga does it as well as anybody in the business.
Amazing, right? Amazing season they've had. Really cool stuff. Great job, Raja. Appreciate you as always, man.
Always fun to be on, brother.